I'm co-host James Ash.
And I'm co-host Phil Scaife.
Welcome to the Business Lockdown. Welcome to the Business Lockdown once again, Mr. John Borland. How are you doing, mate?
Really good, thanks. Thanks for having me back on. Must have been all right the first time to get a recall on this, so I'm happy with that.
Well, we felt there was room for improvement, so we thought we'd give you a second bite the cherry there. But episode 11, early April, Mr. Scaife, that you brought John on board, and that was a phenomenal episode, wasn't it?
Yeah, so like one of my favourite people, not just guests. That was great. And yeah, absolutely. Let's see what's happened since then for all of us, and see how you've travelled since then. Good to see you again, John.
Yeah, thanks. Good to see you as well, mate.
Well, something I really want to drill down on today is personal brand development. You know, building your own personal brand. John, you've got spaciouscoaching.co.uk, but we spoke last time. You were just transitioning between brands, weren't you? And we spoke on kind of the pain points and any friction points during that process. And you said, well, actually, it's more about you as a person under that company. So you could almost call the company anything, really. And since then, of course, you've been podcasting. You know, I think there's some inspiration maybe taken, Phil, from ourselves.
Both of you. You are my heroes. Let's just start there. You are my heroes.
You're not gonna get the tattoo out, though, are you? You know, of our faces. We'll leave that.
No, because I've only got yours done, Phil, not James's, so it's going to be embarrassing.
Oh, that'll get awkward, yeah.
Yeah, don't. I'll just say, hold off on that one. Just give it a bit more time. Give it a bit more time to make that life decision, that life choice decision. But tell us about your podcasting route, John, because I know it was something that you had in mind for a long while. Something that you just didn't get off the ground, which a lot of people don't either. They may have the time to record content, but they don't. You know, there's so much involved behind the scenes on strategy, on getting the right guest, what topics to discuss. You know, how long are you going to discuss them for, the continuity. So, can you tell us, how that's looked since we had you on episode
11? So I think doing the podcast with you guys gave me the kick up the arse I needed to go, hang on a minute, this can be done. Let's make this happen. I think seeing it in real life almost, rather than just sort of assuming what it was going to be like, was really helpful. So I effectively did that podcast with you, and that kind of kicked into motion, almost like a real sort of kick this into gear and make this happen. And then really it was about getting hold of the people who can do the bits that I can't do, which is obviously, your guys, James at Pink, who kind of do all the behind the scenes stuff for me, and actually couldn't make it easier, in terms of just, I basically feel like I record episodes, throw them at them, and they kind of make it all singing and all dancing and make it work. So in terms of creating the podcast, for me, it's pretty painless. It really isn't that difficult at all. Your guys at Pink are absolutely different class. They just make things happen, and they make things work, and I'm involved in the whole process of it, but I don't have to do any of the stuff that I'm not good at or don't know how to do, or the stuff that would take me absolutely ages, but they can do in a heartbeat. So, I love that, because I love it when people are playing to the strengths, and I love how much your guys at Pink love creating this stuff as well. I love the fact that they love it, and I love the fact that they love doing the jobs that I would absolutely flipping hate doing. So it works really well. So for me, it's been 100 times easier than I actually thought it would be to create podcasts. So, and I like stuff simple, straightforward, easy. I'm all over that. So, it's been fantastic for me. And I think I think doing it with you guys sort of showed me, I think I was overcomplicating it in my mind, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I think there's a tendency there, isn't there, with anything that we don't know, to assume that there's a bit more rocket science involved than there actually is. So I think as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, hang on, I can do this. Let's make this work. And it really just kicked me into gear. And it has proved to be as simple as I actually thought it was going to be.
I think having episode 1, which was titled "Winging It," right?
Underlying was the idea that we were winging it. The title was "None of Us Know What We're Actually Doing," or something along that ilk. Yeah. Which we just thought was a really good place to start, because I was talking to my mate who's a leader in education, And we grew up together. We're both the same age. And, none of us, neither of us, we often talk about the idea that people look at us like we know what we're doing, but we don't. We're just making it up as we go along. We're making things happen. We maybe know a bit more now than we did 20 years ago, but we still don't know. And there's something brilliant about not knowing, because not knowing means you're pushing yourself. You're out your comfort zone. You're doing something different. So, 2 months ago, whenever it was, 3 months ago, 4 months ago, I don't know, I did not have a clue how to do a podcast. And now I've got a podcast and I've got people listening to it, and I've got it on all different channels, and I've got a Facebook group and all that kind of stuff. And it's like it's just come out of nowhere. It's just like this has kind of just happened. And now I've had 2 conversations in the last 2 weeks where people are ringing me asking for my advice on making a podcast. And I'm like, this is brilliant, because I didn't know what I was doing a few months ago. And now I'm dishing out like podcast tips. It's almost ridiculous, isn't it? Almost ridiculous.
It's like this, isn't it? 1 page ahead of someone makes you the expert.
Yeah. I still don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just doing the best I can. And obviously I know a bit more than they do because they're just starting out. So you're right. 1 page ahead, it works, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Indeed. What advice? I mean, action is key, right? This is something that resonates with most of our guests, if not all, in many walks of life, let alone business. And you certainly took that. What advice have you got for people out there who are hesitant, or say like the over planners, the perfectionists?
Luckily, I'm not blessed with perfectionism. It's really good, because I'm quite happy with things being a bit rough and ready. I'm quite happy with just giving stuff a go. I'm really comfortable with failing. So I'm all right with just making it happen. And I think early on, business kind of taught me this, that you will never be ready. Like you'll never be ready enough. So you can be getting yourself ready. And ultimately, you've just got to kind of crack on, which is why we did the first episode. We don't know what we're doing. And almost as we're making the first episode, I'm going, I don't know how to make a podcast. Let's just make a podcast. And I think there's something about that really resonated with people, because I think most of us as grown-ups, I think when we were kids, we had some idea that when we became grown-ups, we'd know what we were doing. Because I think grown-ups in our world conned us into believing that they knew what they were doing. But then I think most of us have arrived in adulthood and realised that we still don't know what we're doing. We're making it up as we go every step of the way. I remember being a kid and looking at my mum and dad and thinking, they just know what they're doing. They didn't have a clue. They're just making it up. And it's the same thing. And I think if you can accept that most people are making it up as they go along, it just gives you the courage to step out, do stuff, make stuff happen. If it all goes a bit pear-shaped, it doesn't really matter, does it? You'll learn from it. You'll figure. I think that's the other thing, actually. I see things as a learning curve all the time. I'm really comfortable with not knowing, but knowing that I'll learn from it and it'll get better and I'll improve and it'll be okay. Actually, it will be okay. Things evolve, don't they?
Really love that, John. I think we may have touched on this on your episode. That's I'm on board with that that kind of that mindset and whatever. If something bad happens, there's always something good to come of it. I mean, how does that work within your professional capacity, your coaching capacity? Because that's almost alien for people, right? Coming in, I'm sure you get people coming in who that is just like they've never thought like that before. Again, if it's either the super planners, people who are too nervous and too much anxiety to try something new because it might not work. It might not work out, so I'll stay in the safe zone. How do you approach clients like that when clients come in and they're so resistant or full of nerves to make changes? What does that look like?
So I think there's a huge thing about fear of failure. And generally, it's interesting this, because generally you tend to find, this isn't always true, but so many people have grown up and never failed at anything. They've literally never failed at anything. And what's happened is they've just stuck to the things that they're really good at, done the things that they know, done the things that can be certain of. But I think the problem with that is it leads to boredom and routine and sameness, and it's almost a midlife crisis, isn't it? It's like, my life, I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life. There's no adventure, there's no excitement with it. So, and I think the fear of failure is worse than failure itself, 99% of the time. We make it worse in our own heads than it's ever going to be in real life. So if I put out an episode of my podcast that's crap, like what happens? Some people just don't listen. Somebody might say that's a bit crap. It might not get some, audience figures. Like, so what? Like almost like it's not the worst thing in the world, is it? What I'll figure out is that doesn't work. The next episode I make, I'll try and make it better. It's dead simple, really. And I think it's about helping people shift perspective on that, because I do think the fear of failure, or the fear of losing face, the fear of criticism, the fear of standing out, just holds us stuck and trapped so much in life. It really does. It keeps people small. And I suffered from it myself. So I'm not talking like I've evolved beyond this. I really haven't. I still suffer from it now, but I'm aware of it and conscious of it. And I think when I'm working with my clients, it's just a lot of what we would call perspective questions, just helping them see things from different angles, see beyond the failure, cut past it, and just see what other kind of perspectives they've got on it. Because the fear of failure is a perspective. It's the way we're looking at something, and we're often making it much bigger than it actually is. Mm-hmm. We're making a lion out of what's actually a pussycat. And I think if we can help people with that, you can put failure in its rightful place.
Well, how much does vulnerability come into that as well? There's a couple of examples that cropped up with Gary Vaynerchuk. What he says, he used the Eminem, 8 Mile, the Eminem movie, and at the end when he's doing a rap battle, and he goes firstly, and he just basically takes the piss out of himself and just opens himself up on all of his points. So the guy then who comes on had nothing to say. He's got nowhere to go. And also like Drake, the one of the world's biggest music artists, he says he can't sing. He uses auto-tune for everything. So nobody can come at him with that anymore. Nobody. Yeah. So it's out there. He says, well, of course I can't sing. That's why I use auto-tune. Whereas if the opposite, if he was trying to make himself out and disguise it, he's open for the taking, right? So, how much does that play? Do you try and coach that with your clients? Is that like, because we've seen that, and certainly in this world, is vulnerability and expertise are key. If you can show vulnerability whilst being an expert, I mean, like those two things are just going hand in hand right now, especially when with COVID, everybody's, felt a community and been together, and we're all experiencing this. How do you work with that? Because people don't want to be vulnerable, right? They don't want to be vulnerable. They want to show themselves as a pure expert in their industry. If they're a manager, they don't want to show their employees that they can do anything wrong or make mistakes. How do you work that with your clients, John?
I think vulnerability is key. Right. It's massive, isn't it? Certainly in terms of building friendships, relationships of any kind. It can't be done without vulnerability, because vulnerability and trust go hand in hand. If you're vulnerable and that you build trust through that, and then there's more trust you have, the more vulnerable you can be. They're just constantly entwined together. But you're right. I think so many people struggle with vulnerability. It's not something I struggle with massively. I'm really okay with saying I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not quite sure what's going on here. I'm not even sure if I'm any good at that. Let's give that a bash. And it's interesting because, certainly my podcast, a lot of the episodes we've put out, a lot of the comments underneath or feedback I've had is, whoa, that is so vulnerable. So thank you for being so vulnerable. But in recording the episode, it doesn't feel that vulnerable. It feels completely normal for me. I'm almost just having a normal conversation with people I know about normal things, the type of conversation I would have at the pub or having a brew with them or just walking in the park. And that's completely normal for me. And what's, again, kind of surprised me a little bit is the lack of vulnerability that people have in their life. That's almost weird for them and alien and a bit different, because I have these types of conversations with people all the time. And I think from a coaching point of view, with the people that I work with, I tell people from early on, sometimes I might not know what to ask you next. And if I don't, I'll just say, I'm not really sure where to go with this. If we get stuck, I'll just go, I'm a bit stuck here. I don't really know what to do with it. I don't think I have to look like I know what I'm doing all the time, or look like I'm the complete expert, or there's something about that, the level of confidence to say I don't know what I'm doing, that breeds trust from people. And I think what happens is, because I'm like that as a coach, it almost invites vulnerability from my clients as well, that they're prepared to be more vulnerable. It's really difficult to be vulnerable with somebody who looks flipping perfect, who seems amazing. It's really difficult. It's much more easy to be vulnerable with someone who's also showing you the chinks in their armor. So I think there's something about that. And I don't see myself as some sort of super coach some sort of life guru who knows what I'm doing all the time. I see myself as almost part of the mass of people who are just trying to do life better and trying to figure it out and improve ourselves and grow ourselves. And I've maybe got some stuff to help other people out with and feedback and pass on. But I'm not like, I don't know what I'm doing all the time. I'm not perfect with stuff. I'm not trying to be. I think there's something about being really human, because I think people can connect with that. I think when people are too amazing, too perfect, it's not real anyway. And I like stuff that's real. I like stuff that's honest and raw. So it's important for me. And I think I probably attract people towards me then that like that as well and value it.
Love that. Phil, what's your take on vulnerability? How's that to you?
So yeah, just when you're talking there, so Keris, she's just reopened the salon. So she's had 2 weeks of going through like new legislation and implementing that in the salon and changing the whole business model and the way it works, purely to obviously safely serve the community, the clients, and also protect all the girls in the team. And she went through this very focused and very stressful period of time. And then the first thing she did, and I'm so proud of her, the first thing she did, she came home on the Friday night and we were opening on the Saturday. No hair done, no makeup on. And she just sat down and she did a Facebook Live. And it was just a real sort of like bare all, just 100% vulnerability. It's like, I've done everything I possibly can, and like we're in this together, and I hope it works for you. Like, let me know. We're open, and thanks for the team. But in an industry like the salon world, where it's all about hair and makeup and tan and nails and things, for her to spin it on its head and just go, look, I'm out my depth here. I'm doing the best I can, and let's get through this together. It probably one of the most powerful things I've seen, and it just came so naturally. And the response back, because she didn't go and spend half an hour getting ready and script it out and then go, right, okay, so these are the procedures, this is what you're feeling. It was just complete, like, if you've got any questions, ask me. I've got questions that I don't know the answer to. And it was just, and yeah, it really, really resonated. So yeah, vulnerability it's massive in forming the connection, isn't it? Forming that rapport, isn't it? That commonality.
Well, we are talking about personal brand building as well, and we've spoke many times, Phil, on how Keris is untapped. Like, when she comes on camera, she's just amazing and doesn't realise it. And actually, we're seeing more of this content come through, which is going to be, I feel, is going to be a really exciting journey in the next few months, as the business world comes out, and certainly in the salon industry. So yeah, that's great to hear. That's a huge step, and to have that response, see that engagement from the audience is key.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're all on a journey where we don't really know what the next steps are. So we're all like finding our way through, and the more of those conversations we can start, and where it is along the lines of you just don't know what's going to happen next, but you're gonna try your best, and you're gonna try and figure it out. And if you can do it openly on a platform like this, then it's amazing how many people learn from that or engage with that. I mean, we've had interviews, haven't we, where we've come out the other side and we've held our hands up and gone, this wasn't how we expected it to go. This didn't work, and we are as responsible, totally responsible for that. But the other part to it is trying to come across as you are in full control, and you're just not, are you? And
no.
and people need to know that, yeah, none of us are in control. It doesn't matter whether you're the expert in your field or a novice in your field. It's not, life is not a machine with a series of buttons and an instruction manual, and it's 1 + 1 = 2. And as soon as you can give away that and just go, it's liberating, isn't it? And people resonate to that.
Well, talking about like vulnerability and anxiety, so that, how has that looked with bringing your guests onto your show, John? Has everybody been super up for it? Has there been some nerves? Because I know we experienced people going, "Oh, can you send me the script? What questions am I going to be asked?" what does your audience look like? You know, we've had that come through. Or people just not believing that, like, oh, are you sure you want me on the show? I mean, what, like, have you experienced some of those things and anything different with your guests?
Yeah. So, some of the guests are like, "Oh, my life, I'm really nervous." It only lasts a couple of minutes because when we get into it, it's like we're just having a normal conversation. So, that kind of works for them. And the other thing is, I don't script anything. So, the only thing really that's planned is that I've got an opening question that I ask every guest, which is, if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be? And obviously, on the first episode, he didn't know that was coming, but after that, kind of people know that's coming, so they've maybe started to prep that up a little bit. But beyond that, we basically just pick a subject and go for it. So I don't really know what's coming. I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what they're going to say. But then that for me was really important because I don't like stuff that's too scripted. I don't like stuff that feels a bit forced or a bit fake, or like someone's trying to get something in. So it's just a free flowing chat. Like, let's just go for it and see where this goes. Because I think I didn't have this great plan when I started, but retrospectively now, I'm starting to realize that what I really want for my podcast is that it's literally like sitting in the pub and listening to two people on the next table and earwigging a little bit about this interesting conversation that they're having. And obviously we reference the fact there's people listening and there's an audience, but the idea is that it's completely unscripted and we're going to go for it. And for some people, that's really quite vulnerable because they want to be in control of it. But then I suppose I'm inviting guests on my show who I know are going to be all right with that and can just roll with it. I wouldn't have someone on my show who really needs a script or needs a plan because it just doesn't work. There's some podcasts out there that I've listened to that just, they're not my thing, and they're not my thing because it's too scripted. It's almost, for me, it's almost overproduced. Mm-hmm. And what I like real stuff, real people talking about real things that are really relatable. And I suppose that's what I'm trying to do with it. And not come across like, this is so amazing and all singing, all dancing, but this is like the type of conversation you would hear me have in my house. Like, it's not something that we're staging up at all. It's almost an insight into the types of conversations I would have with people in normal life.
Yeah. How are you finding it with that, with timings? Because obviously that naturally means that you kind of hit a flow, don't you? And so do you keep the times elastic? Do you allow, or?
The rough plan is 30 minutes, and we sort of stick to that a little bit, but sometimes it runs on because it just does, and it's not come to a natural end. One of my shows went on, I think, 45 minutes, and that was because it was just good, and I was like, I'm not cutting this short. But then other times they've gone on like 36 or 37 minutes because I forgot to start the timer. So I don't know where we're up to. So I was like, I think that's about 30-ish minutes. Let's kind of wrap it up. I don't really know. So there has been the odd like winging it moment where I'm like, that feels about 30 minutes. Let's kind of roll with that. So, I've got a little bit better as I've gone along now, remembering to kind of start the clock and have some sort of guidance of what time we're up to. But there was a couple of shows where I genuinely didn't know. I was just hoping it was about 30-ish minutes. So it's a bit of a learning curve, isn't it? But I don't know, mate. I think there's something about when people kind of know they've got 30 minutes, it feels like it kind of works with that. And actually, I think if I've got someone on who's, there's more to hear, I'll invite him back at some point and we'll go again with it. So it's all right, isn't it?
Yeah,
absolutely. And, looking through generally on your episodes, what main pieces stand out? Who you interviewed and what stood out, just to kind of give our listeners, our audience, some insight in order to some hooks to go towards what might be interesting for them.
Yeah, so there, just to start off with that, there is no master plan with my sort of like episodes. It's almost a case of that person's interesting. I think they've got an interesting topic to talk about. Let's roll with that. So it's kind of just, every episode's different. I mean, there's certainly ones that have stood out, and they'll have stood out for different people in different ways. But when I spoke to my mate John he was talking about the death of his wife and how he's dealt with that and the journey he's been on. I mean, it's difficult to listen to that without, really getting emotionally connected to it. So I think that was a standout for us. But then I suppose everyone that I've worked with, there's been a different message coming through. And I think that the common theme for me is just the realness of it. I think the first episode took people by surprise because I was talking to my best mate from growing up, and him being a leader in education and him saying I ain't got a clue what I'm doing, and he leads like these whole teams of people and he doesn't know what he's doing. That kind of stands out for people. And Ellie, who I had on in episode 2, just talking about like she's this mom and she's working and she's trying to juggle it all, and how does that work? That resonates for loads of people. So I'm trying to pick. I'm not trying to pick, but I'm trying to work with episodes that have got a range for people. So some people will like some stuff and some people won't like others, but I'm trying to create almost a bit of a catalogue for people that they can pick the ones that really resonate the most with them and kind of work for them. So, it kind of varies. I mean, like the one I did recently with Emily, which was all about why don't we do the things that make us well? I was like, I'm not quite sure where this is going to go or how this is going to work, but she came across brilliantly. She got so many little golden nuggets for people about that whole kind of stuff. So, I could mention every single person that we've done it with, because I think it's almost those little golden nuggets that come out of the episodes, isn't it? And that's what makes it worth it for me. When we get people going, oh, that bit, that 2 minutes or that sentence, that's made a big difference to me. That's the point of it, really, isn't it? That's the idea that people are walking away with those things. They're not going to remember the whole 30 minutes of what we talked about. They're just remembering those resonating moments for themselves.
Yeah. And in a way, if you try and focus and be real rigid to get that, it often won't happen, right? Whereas if you go, right, we're just going to have a chat, we're going to be relaxed, we're going to see where this goes. There's no better way, like certainly in my opinion, I think speak for all of us here, that to get those golden nuggets out of it is just to have a general chat and be relaxed. And we always say with our guests, it's like when they say, oh, so what we're going to talk about, it's like, right, it's not an interview, it's a chat. First of all, although it's not live, it's unedited and it's pre-recorded. So straight away they're like, right, okay, that sounds a bit better. And you go, look, your shit, and we're not journalists. We're not trying to back you into a corner, like So and they're like, oh, well, that's all right then. Yes, exactly. And then it's funny. Some of the most nervous guests are often the ones that just like you're 45, 50 minutes later going, yeah, right, we're gonna have to cut this, and they're properly in the flow. But
I think there's something for me as well. As I used to know somebody years ago who tried to be profound almost in everything that they said. It was like they were attempting to say these sentences.
And was his name Phil Scaife?
So it's like they were trying to be profound, and it was like they were trying to say sentences and do some sort of mic drop, or like
is he a wise old Chinaman?
It was that type of feel, and it was like as if they were going to say a sentence and instill some unbelievable wisdom into your life, and then some music was going to play as they disappeared off into the distance, like it was a movie. And I can remember it just irritating me a bit. Like it almost just felt unreal. And I think that had a profound effect on me, that I was like, I'm not going to try and be profound. I'm not going to attempt to say stuff that's life altering for people. I'm just going to say what comes up, and I'm going to say what's in my head, and I'm going to share my thoughts. And if it happens to have an effect on people, then that's great. And if it doesn't, they can just turn it off, can't they? They don't have to listen to it. So I think there's something about being really natural and normal with it, and not. I think the more you're trying to be profound, almost the less profound you become, because it loses that authenticity, that vulnerability. So knowing that person really helped me. Actually, it made me sort of cling more to the realness of stuff, and let's just talk about things and see what comes up and work with it.
Yeah. Have you achieved what you wanted to achieve with the podcast?
I don't know, because I don't know what I wanted to achieve, is the honest answer. I know as a businessman, I meant to say, oh, there's this amazing strategy and this plan, and then we put together an amazing sort of like plan of action of how this was going to. I have no idea, mate. I don't know.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, what I wanted to achieve is always like make a difference in some way, affect people's lives, affect their growth, help them along the path, share some stuff that's useful. That's it for me. So yes, we've achieved that. And for me, I'm not really even obsessed with the numbers either. I'm not. I mean, I'd be lying if nobody's listening. I wouldn't be a bit like, oh, hang on a minute, I'm doing something. I need to change something here. But at the same time, I'm not overly obsessed with like who's listening, what are the numbers, how's it going? Because for me, it's more about the individuals and the difference it makes to them. So if it works for people, then I'm really happy with that. but I still don't have any great plan. I started doing it fortnightly, which was more, we're in the middle of lockdown. We've lost loads of our business. We haven't got a lot of money. I think we can afford to do this fortnightly. It was a money thing. And then I was like, right, hang on, we can do this weekly. So let's go weekly. That feels better in terms of rhythm. But again, mate, I'm making it up. I don't really know. I have no great master plan. I like the idea of venturing out a bit into the unknown and seeing what happens. So if you said to me, what's the vision for my podcast? I don't have one, mate. I genuinely don't have one. I'm just going to keep making episodes, see where it goes, go along for the ride. It might really take me somewhere. It might not. It'll do something anyway, won't it? It'll create something. It might open another opportunity. Who knows?
Whatever it is, that's okay.
Yeah, whatever it is going to be absolutely fine. And I'm enjoying doing it. I like it, so I find it fun. I find it interesting. It's not really hard work. It's ridiculous. I sit and chat with people I like for half an hour and then kind of put it out there and it works. And yeah, it's as simple as that for me.
When you're on the red carpet, John, and you're picking up an award in the near future for your podcast, and they ask you what's your vision, you at that point you could just say, "I'm the vision." Just look away confidently. So, but,
yeah, I could, or else, or again, I'll probably say, "I ain't got a clue. I don't know what's next."
Exactly.
See where we're going. Interestingly, though, in that. The bit that I find the most difficult and the bit that I find the most vulnerable is the personal branding bit. Right. That's the bit I really struggle with. Even calling it the John Borland podcast makes me cringe a little bit inside. It really does. I want to, when I wrote my first book, I was desperate to write it in a pen name, write it by somebody else so I can almost hide behind it. So I think there is, there's a massive part of me that's extrovert and I'm really okay with being in the spotlight. I'm really okay with being up front. But there's also a massive part of me that hates that kind of like, look at me, aren't I brilliant, aren't I amazing bit. So I think from just being raised in the north of England and that whole idea of don't show off and don't boast still exists within me. So calling it the John Borland podcast is almost the hardest bit of it for me.
That's your vulnerability. That's your vulnerability, isn't it?
Yeah, massively.
You're where you're going, I'm happy to kind of show myself and just wing it and see what happens and all of that. Where you might have the people who are fine calling it their brand name, but struggle kind of being real and seeing how things go. So I mean, I guess that's in a way that's your vulnerability and not being too comfortable with stuff.
And it's only me that cares. Nobody else gives a monkeys. I know that full well. Nobody else cares. Nobody's looking at it going, "Oh, I can't believe you call it the John Borland podcast." Nobody cares. That all exists in my own head. It's almost a conversation that I have between my ego and my real self. Do you know that's kind of what goes on for me? But being really honest with you, that's the bit. The John Borland podcast is the bit that still that makes me go. But then I took advice from a great wise man about that when I was speaking to Phil about it months ago, and Phil kind of said to me, "You've got to call it your name, mate. You've got to. You can't dodge it. You can't avoid it. You've got to go with it." So, and
I think it comes back to an authenticity.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not about a stage and spotlights and things. It's about an authenticity, and I think any brand takes a bit away from that. It's and that was, I think, the conversation that we had.
And so to be fair, you were bang on, Phil. You're absolutely right. It was the right thing to do to call it the John Borland podcast. But I think probably without you saying that to me that overtly, I reckon I would have been tempted to dodge it and hide it and come up with some sort of fancy title for it. But actually, the reality is, it is the John Borland podcast because it's me talking to people I know about life. So it is that straightforward.
Yeah.
But there is still that little bit of me that goes, "Oh, it feels a bit funny." That
would I be right in thinking, John, that then you record, you drop your show notes and send it off. Having Pink, having the team, then create your stuff that almost helps separate yourself a bit because it's then putting your name on things and promoting you. And I can imagine.
Yeah, massively. Yeah, massively helps me. It's like I just record it, send it off. They then make it, look how it looks. They don't edit it, but they kind of put the beginning and ending on and pick some clips out of it and write some quotes and stuff like that and make it all look really good and fancy and nice. But yeah, two things. It does separate that for me. It feels okay that they're doing it. But also I think then for me, it just makes the whole process straightforward and simple. And again, it's that playing to strengths, isn't it? What I'm really good at is communicating with people, talking, chatting, helping people to be vulnerable, share their stories. I'm really good at that stuff. What I'm not really good at is like the technical side of stuff, or like even now I look like I know what I'm doing because I've got earphones in and this fancy mic. But that's a really new thing. Like I'm just sort of learning as I go along with it. So I like the fact that those guys are doing the bit that they love. I love it that some of the team in Pink love like checking the data and the stats and how many listeners and all. I would never be asked in a million years to check in with that stuff. It's really important and it works for us, but I love the fact that they love it. So the relationship's fantastic. It could not have been easier or better. And the lines of communication are just dead good as well. I get to talk to them. If there's something wrong, I tell them. They're not happy with something I'm doing, they tell me. So it just works really well. It's brilliant. Honestly, it's probably seeing the way you guys did it and then getting introduced to the team at Pink was like one of those great moments in life where you're like, brilliant, like where everything sort of comes together for you. One of those opportunities.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been brilliant.
Well, that's great. That's amazing to hear. But what's more amazing is that we know our team, when they grab this episode and work on it, will hear it, and that's bigger for us. That's amazing because we know how hard they've worked and the commitment over the last 3+ months on everything that they do. But we're going to have to wrap up soon. Phil, I think did you have a question, or I've got one final question to throw to both of you.
Yeah, I'm conscious of time, but we were talking about sort of simplicity and authenticity. And just before we started recording, you let us know about your latest guest who you've interviewed. And I just wanted you to just talk a little bit about how that came about and how it's gone, because it was your lad, right?
Yeah, so I've been interviewing and talking with people that I know well because I wanted there to be a rapport and a naturalness to it. And I didn't really want to turn it into them chat shows on telly where people just come promote their latest thing. I wasn't really interested in that. I wanted it to be real, like I've said. So I've got 3 kids, but I got my 12-year-old boy, Jackson, on and asked him if he'd do a podcast with me. And he was a bit like, whoa, hang on a minute. How's that work? What do I do? But the way it came about really is we've just recorded an episode which will be out in a few weeks around the subject of love. Because I came home one day from work and he was saying to me, what you been kind of teaching people today? And it was part of our coaching diploma course. We'd been talking about unconditional love. And he was saying, what's that then? So we talked about it and we talked, in a bit of detail about just having tea. And then he said to me, yeah, I get what you're saying there. He said, so I don't have unconditional love for you, Dad. And I was like, all right, okay, I do for you. And he's like, yeah, no, I understand why you do, but I don't for you. There's definitely things you could do that would mean I would stop loving you. And he said, I know you're not going to do them, but there would be those things. And I'm like, yeah, and the opposite of that is that actually there's nothing you could do that would stop me loving you. There's things you could do I wouldn't be happy about, I wouldn't be proud of, I wouldn't like, but there's nothing you could actually do that would stop me loving you. So then I said, let's do a podcast about this, mate. Let's get you on and talk about that. And it's interesting because it turns a little bit more into a Jackson interviewing me and asking me questions about love and different types of love and relationships and marriage. It kind of evolved because we didn't know where we were going with it. It just kind of evolved into that. But yeah, I think it works. We're going to put it out anyway and give people a listen to it. It is the type of conversation I would have with Jackson, eating breakfast or just playing footy in the park with him or whatever. We'd be chatting about that stuff. So again, it's just real and raw, but I just thought it'd be different to get a kid on and kind of see what that's like. He was really worried that he'd made a crap podcast episode for me, though. He was like, is it crap, Dad? Don't put it out if it's crap. And I was like, no, mate, it's really all right. We're just going to stick it out anyway, because I think for some people, it'll really resonate, won't it? And it'll be interesting for them to see that kind of connection that's going on there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's quite rare to get such a raw insight into a parental-child relationship and those sort of conversations, because they go on behind closed doors, don't they? And so to put that sort of conversation out there, again, it shows massive vulnerability. But I think it'd be very enlightening to just to be a fly on the wall to that sort of conversation.
Yeah,
especially at that age as well. 12 is 12. You say?
Yeah, Jackson's 12, but he is and always has been from being really little. It's not anything I've done. It's kind of innate in him. He's deep thinking. He sees the world in different ways. He asks questions that I can't answer. He's asked questions like that from being really, really little. And to be honest, if everyone's going right, Jax would go left just to see what was there. He's that type of kid where he likes to look at things from different angles and thinks things through. And and he reminds you of stuff as well. Like he reminded me when we all got locked down. He was like, "Do you feel a bit of a muppet now, Dad?" And I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, a few months ago, I asked you about coronavirus and whether we needed to be worried and whether it would affect us. And you just listed all the things that you'd lived through up until this point that had never had any impact on your life and said coronavirus will be probably like that. Now we're all stuck at home and we can't go to school and I can't play footy. Do you feel a muppet?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do feel a muppet, mate. Yeah, in hindsight. Don't listen to your dad. I don't know what I'm talking about." But so it's that kind of thing where he's just into the world. He doesn't let you off the hook either. He will not let you off the hook at all. So yeah, hopefully he's going to be a good guest and hopefully, it'll work for people to listen to.
Love that. Well, we'll certainly look forward to that episode and sharing it and celebrating it. It's an amazing concept. It starts to get you to think like, well, who else would be really different and interesting to interview? And I love that, John. Well, before we sign off, we've got one question to you both, and I've shortened it by half. But if you could interview one person, past or present, in brackets, dead or alive, who would that be and why?
Are you looking for a famous name here?
Well, a well-known name, a well-known name in celebrity. It's like, a well-known name that people would know. So why? Who would you interview and why? Phil. John. I mean, do you want me to go first? Shall I answer my own question?
I've got loads. I could go forever with this. Do you want to go, Phil, or do you want me to jump in?
No, you go. Let's give me some time.
So for me, I think Mahatma Gandhi. I know that sounds very deep and profound, but I'd love to just get inside his head and his thinking and see where he was coming from with stuff. I think he'd be fascinating. I just want to know, I suppose I'm curious, was the real man like the legends become? Do you know, like, was the real guy as kind of the persona that's been created and that kind of, because he's the type of guy where people credit quotes to him all over the internet. And it's like, did he actually say that or did he not? I'm not quite sure. It's just been put to him. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time getting to know him probably and what was really going on for him in that walk of life. The other one for me, though, would be Michael Collins, the third guy on the Apollo trip to the moon. He didn't get to walk on the moon. I'd love to know.
Well, but did the other two really walk on the moon? Did that? Did any of it happen? Could you ask him that first?
Yeah, that'd be first question. Imagine it did, being that close but not walking on it. I just want to know what that would be like as well. Anyway, over to you, Phil.
My mind's gone blank. My initial thought to that was actually my granddad, because
nice.
Because my granddad he set the family going in a certain direction, and I would love to have a chat with him about how his thought process was, how that came about, the reasons why he did it, and what he hoped would come from it. So that would be a real personal thing. Would be that would be the interview. He's famous to me.
No, I love that. Absolutely.
So, that would be my interview. How about you, James?
Straight up, and it might sound a bit daft, but Steve Irwin, definitely, 100%. I remember it's just his passion and his energy and his ultimate drive on what he sets out to do, why he does it, and still you had this negativity coming into him, and he was like bulletproof, and he was just like, well, no, I'm awareness is key because then I make more money, and do you know what I'm going to do with that money? I'm going to buy more land, and I'm going to build reservations on there. And he was just like, oh, so awesome. I remember I was doing a big world travel, and I was in Vietnam when the news came up on it. It was an Australian TV network, and the news came through that he died. And I remember with my girlfriend at the time, we just sat in all day watching this Australian news channel, with all of the videos and the touching memories and stuff, like in tears. I just remember thinking, like, just an awesome guy, and I really believe that the world, has lost someone very, very special there with him. So just to be able to be sat with him, and you almost wouldn't need to talk. You just throw him a little thing and then just sit back, like the energized by him. So yeah, Steve. So we've got Steve Irwin. It was yours, John Gandy, and Phil's granddad, not a grand mix.
What a show!
We've had that in a round table. That'd be some mix, wouldn't it? On that note, gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. John, where can people find you?
So you can find me at spaciouscoaching.co.uk, on Facebook group, the John Borland Podcast. It's also on Instagram as well, the John Borland Podcast.
Everywhere.
LinkedIn as well, John Borland's. Just kind of hit me up, get in touch with me, etc., etc. Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolute pleasure.
Good to see you again, John. Thanks for coming on.
Awesome. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Business Lockdown.
Please comment, like, share and subscribe to help build our global community.
We look forward to seeing you all soon.